Welcome to More Than a Lawyer with your host, attorney Christy Crow. This is a podcast that highlights the amazing acts of service that lawyers perform all over the country. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, www.jinxcrow.com. Now here's the host of More Than a Lawyer, Christy Crow.
Welcome back to More Than a Lawyer. We're so glad to have with us today Andy Nichols. Andy practices with Horman and Nichols in Frederick, Maryland. And I'm especially happy to have him here. We're recording this at the beginning of May, and May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And we're going to get into why that makes me especially happy to have Andy here this month in a few minutes. But welcome to the show, Andy. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Christy. I really appreciate you having me.
Well, I'm excited to get to the subject at hand. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice and what do you do?
Sure, I appreciate that. So I live here in Frederick. I've been here now for about 18 years. I live with my wife and two teenage kids. I commuted for a while back and forth to Baltimore for a little over 9 years and finally had the opportunity to relocate my practice here in my local hometown about 8 years ago. And I've enjoyed the extra time I'm saving on the commute and sitting in traffic. My practice areas primarily consist of workers' compensation on behalf of the employer and insurer, and then I also do personal injury on behalf of injured individuals.
That's great, Andy. And you know, the reason why I wanted to talk to you this month is because May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and mental health and wellness is something that I like to focus on in many areas when I'm talking to lawyers because I don't think we focus on it enough. And you are passionate about it as well. So I'm super excited to get to talk to you about your passion project. But first, I know you do volunteer a lot there in Frederick, in your hometown. How do you balance your practice with the different kinds of clients and meeting the needs of your clients with your volunteer work?
Well, I'm very fortunate in that my business partner, Marshall Horman, he's third or fourth generation here in Frederick, so he understands the importance of, being involved in the community, and so he's very understanding when my volunteer work pulls me away from the office. And so that's the first key. That's helpful to have a business partner that's understanding. Hey, I'm just going to be out of the bag for a day or two. I may be not super responsive. And then for me, I'm very fortunate that my wife is also very supportive of my time I spend volunteering with the Mental Health Association. So when you have people that understand what it is you're volunteering your time for, it makes that balance a lot easier to achieve. Or at least that's been my experience.
Speaking of the Mental Health Association, that's something that you spend a lot of time working with. Tell us what the Mental Health Association is and what it does there in Maryland.
Sure. So I work specifically with the Mental Health Association here in Frederick County. MHA, as is the shorthand for it, offers a lot of services of little to no charge for Frederick County individuals. This includes a 24/7 walk-in crisis center where individuals who are in a crisis can walk in and see somebody. This includes services for supervised visitation for parents who might be going through a divorce or separation to ensure that the parents have access to the children. And if it's a visitation that has to be supervised, MHA has the facilities to offer that. There's also counseling services. There's a call center that not only assists with just the mental health aspect, but it's also there for vulnerable people in our community who just need a little bit of extra help and direction on finding other services that might be able to assist them with the problem they're going through. MHA just recently had its 26th Catoctin Affair, is what we call the gala, and that fundraising gala helps raise unrestricted funds for MHA to help fund these various projects. I think they have 13 or 14 different programs that they offer through their services.
So the gala is something that I know you said you were in charge of this year. Tell us about the gala and how much money did y'all raise, and tell us all about it.
Well, it's something I've been involved with on the gala planning side, or the Catoctin Affair planning side, for I think this is my 7th year. my first year as a co-chair. I co-chaired the event with a friend of mine, Julie Christensen, and she's been involved actively with the Mental Health Association for at least as long as I have. The event's a black tie event that we hold here in Frederick County. We had 560 attendees this year,
Oh,
and we have
wow.
a lot of local businesses that offer sponsorship. And then while we're at the event, there's live auction of items, and it's a really, really powerful and moving event, very impactful. And this year, the total funds raised were just a little over $300,000.
That's great. And you said that y'all use the money that you raise at the gala as unrestricted funds. Tell us about some of the programs that those funds are used to support there at MHA.
Sure. So, it is nice because sometimes with grants, there are some restrictions on how those funds have to be used within parameters that, kind of impact the use of those. But with these funds, because they're unrestricted, MHA can use those for any of the 14 programs or so they have, which include some of the ones we talked about earlier. I think, the walk-in crisis center, the 24-hour hotline, those are very big ones, important ones. And it's ones that, I know are a big part of MHA's focus, but this allows them to take a look at the needs for each of those programs they run and then use those funds to help whichever program might need that little extra bump in funding at a particular time.
How many people do you reckon MHA helps every year?
I've got the numbers somewhere, but I want to say last year, I think they had over 5,000 phone calls or walk-ins to the crisis center. And so,
Wow.
the impact they're having here in Frederick County is not a small one. It's, one that we're talking about reaches thousands of people directly, and then indirectly, I think there's a bit of a multiplying factor there in terms of who we're able to reach.
Oh, certainly, because if there's a parent that's in crisis and that parent goes and gets the help that they need, then I'm sure it does have a positive impact on the whole family. So
Yeah.
that is amazing, and that's great. What made you get interested in volunteer work generally and helping the Mental Health Association specifically?
Well, I think, in terms of volunteer work, I think it's like a lot of people I know, and I'm sure a lot of the people you've gotten to meet through your platform, there's just a sense that, hey, when I'm living in a community and working in a community, I want to be able to help contribute to that community rather in a meaningful way. And so when I relocated my practice here, I reached out to a friend of mine, a client locally, and asked her, hey, any organizations that you think I should be kind of focusing on trying to get involved with? And she was involved actively with MHA at that time. And she actually recruited me to be on the marketing committee. The Catoctin Affair Planning Committee at MHA. And, for me, it's been a little bit of an interesting journey. I grew up, my experience, in a household. My father's retired military. My mother is Korean. I grew up in a household where not a lot of time was sort of spent talking about emotions and feelings. It was just sort of, hey, here's what you need to do, get it done. And certainly I don't look back on my childhood experience as a bad one, but it helped me realize that, mental health is something that really does affect a lot of people in a real way. Because for me, it was not a real tangible thing that I had to really experience in my life or seen affect others. But through my time with MHA, it's been a journey for me as well. I've actually taken the experiences I've had volunteering with MHA, and I started seeing a therapist last year, mostly just to help deal with some of the stress and anxiety that come with running a business, being a parent, being a partner, being a spouse. And it's benefited me greatly. And it's helped me realize the importance of mental health, both on my personal level, as well as, on a larger scale. And I think it's had a very good impact on me personally, and as a parent and as a spouse.
Well, I know that reducing the stigma attached to seeking mental health is a big thing that I tried to focus on when I was president of the state bar of Alabama. We had a whole issue dedicated to mental health and wellness because there is so much stigma attached to getting help traditionally. And probably because I was raised in a similar household to yours, that's not something we ever talked about either. It wasn't very popular to talk about that in the 70s and 80s. But
Right, right.
I'm so proud for what you're doing to raise awareness of the need for mental health in your community and raise funds for that as well. When you look around at lawyers and look at volunteer boards, you find a lawyer on pretty much every volunteer board that's out there. Why do you think lawyers are good at volunteering their time and good at board service?
Well, I think part of that probably comes with the nature of the work we do. I know you're a trial attorney. I'm a trial attorney. I think you have to triage and be able to sort of look at the particular case you're dealing with and prioritize, okay, here's what we need to do first, second, third. And I think being able to do that as a volunteer, particularly, with different charitable organizations or nonprofits, it's an asset that not everyone has. Some people have other strengths, but I have found generally with attorneys, there is that ability to triage and then problem solve and kind of be decisive. Okay, here's a course of action we should be looking at taking. But I also think that, attorneys, at least the attorneys I know that are active in their community, like Matt Trollinger, who I know connected us, I think for a lot of these attorneys, there is that sense of, hey, being in this community as an attorney, working here, living here, is a privilege for me. I'm able to make my living here. I'm able to raise my family here, and I want to do something just to help. It sounds a little cliche, but just to be able to contribute back to my community as a thank you for what I'm able to enjoy living in that particular community.
No, I don't think that's cliche at all. I think we all need to remember to be thankful for the opportunities that are provided to us in our profession, in our communities. And you said when you moved back to Frederick that you just called a client and found out where the needs were. If you were talking to someone who said, hey, I want to get more involved in my community, I want to give back, what would you recommend they do if they want to volunteer in their community?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of resources now where you can just sort of look up, local nonprofits. Social media has a lot of pages that these various organizations have, and they've got contact information there. Obviously, if friends that are or clients that are actively involved with nonprofits, I think that's a great starting point. That's where I started, obviously. And I think, those people that are maybe more tapped into the community, as was my case, relocating my practice here, are a great resource in trying to find places where you might be able to put your time and effort to use.
Speaking of time and effort, I know we talked about this a little bit at the beginning about how you make time and how your partner has helped you prioritize some of your volunteer work. Why do you think it's important for younger lawyers to carve out the time to volunteer in their communities? And how do you think that might help their career?
Well, I think, for me, I think it's important because you need that little bit of balance of not just feeling like all you're doing is working all the time. I think having a mission, if you will, sort of outside of the workplace, at least for me, has been beneficial. And I think for young people, it's another way of kind of having an outlet maybe for some of that energy and at the end of the week, I think most attorneys I know are still, while we're all tired, we're also kind of buzzing a little bit on all the work we have. And so maybe that's an outlet for that. I think it's beneficial, particularly if you have a practice that is centered mostly in your community. It's a great opportunity to get to know people, to get a sense of what the community's needs are as you're maybe developing your practice or your practice areas. And I think just making those connections is very valuable, particularly for young attorneys who are trying to maybe kind of get a foot in the door of a local or new community as an attorney and trying to build a practice.
Yeah, the other thing that I found is that when I'm working in the community, it makes me a better lawyer because I can communicate better with my clients and with the jury if I'm volunteering in the community and know what the needs are and know what people might think are important. Sometimes we put ourselves in a bubble surrounding ourselves with other lawyers and people that are like-minded in certain ways, and it makes you one-sided if you do that. So I think it's also a good opportunity to sharpen your skills as a trial lawyer if you're out there working in your community and doing that.
Yeah, it's a great point.
So I know the Mental Health Association is your primary focus of what your passion project. What else do you do in your community in your downtime?
So I have, when my kids were in school, they went to a parochial school affiliated with our church. While they were there, I was involved with the school board. I was school board chair for 4 or 5 years. I was on the school board, I think, for 9 years. And now that they've moved on to high school, they actually happen to go to the same high school where I went, my wife went, my business partner went. So we now volunteer time there. And so like my partner and I, we have the last 2 years run the alumni golf tournament. It's a fundraiser for scholarship money for families that might need that little bit of extra assistance. And so, I think I've always said to my kids, you've got idea people, and there's a lot of them, but I think it's important to put your sweat equity into what matters to you. And so for me, I'm very fortunate that my employment situation allows me that flexibility. Hey, I got to cut out this afternoon to take care of this stuff for these various volunteer work. I don't, it's different when I was a new associate and you've got partners and billable requirements and stuff. So it's been a nice way for me to be able to kind of accomplish some of those goals I want to with volunteer work and having that flexibility with my own practice.
And when you are, if an associate at a law firm is listening to this and thinks, well, yeah, that's nice for him. He owns his own firm. Of course, he can cut out early. If you are working for a partner that expects you to have certain billable requirements and wanting to do some volunteer work, what would you recommend to that young lawyer that might be listening in on how to ask for the time necessary to volunteer?
Well, I think a lot of firms, mid-size and up particularly, are always open to volunteer opportunities for their attorneys. And I think if you're going to go to a partner and say, hey, I'd like to, let you know I'm going to be volunteering with this organization, I think it's good that you put yourself in a position where if the partner looks at you, they can say, oh, okay, Andy's work is caught up. We're not having any problems with his billables or productivity or, all those metrics that unfortunately for young associates, they're often measured by. So you put yourself in a position where if you go to a partner and say, hey, I want to do this, they can't look at you and say, well, your billing's not where it should be. But I think, firms are open to that. And I think it's also back to what you kind of touched on earlier, Christy, which is the angle of, hey, here's how this can benefit my practice development as well. And for the firm, because at the end of the day, the reality is for firms, of a larger size, particularly when you've got a bunch of associates, you've got to be productive. The firm's got to be productive. And that's something that the partners look at as a metric for the firm itself, as well as the associates. So having the ability to say, hey, I'm going to be volunteering here, but you're not going to see a dip in my productivity or my billing. You're not going to have clients calling, asking about me. And making that commitment to keeping that balance is helpful. And I was lucky, even when I was an associate with my firm at Baltimore, they were always pretty good about allowing me to get involved with different organizations.
That's great. And the other thing is, if you're a firm owner listening to this and you have somebody come to you, going back to the mental health aspects of it, volunteering is good for your mental health. Getting out of the bubble of practicing law gives you some balance that helps you see the productivity or be more productive when you're back at work, I think. So, kind of circling back to the mental health awareness is a great way to stay healthy mentally, to go and give back in your community and see the results of those actions and what you're doing in people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, I think it gets you out of an echo chamber of just talking to attorneys all the time. Like you, I'm surrounded by friends from law school, fellow attorneys, and sometimes it's nice to be in a group of people where no one's an attorney. You don't find yourself talking about work or talking about cases. And I think that's been an unrecognized benefit of some of this volunteer work, until recently I realized, kind of nice to be able to sit around and not have to talk about jury strategies or trial strategies or, whatever attorneys want to talk about when they're together. It's nice to be around people that don't want to talk about that, and I don't have to be focused on those sorts of things for a while. So that's, as you touched on earlier, it's an added benefit to being out there in your community for sure.
No doubt. Well, Andy, thank you so much for joining us. But this being the More Than a Lawyer podcast, I'll have to ask, what does it mean to be more than a lawyer to you?
I think to me, being more than a lawyer means that I don't want to be identified on when I'm gone from this world as having been a lawyer. I want to be identified as having been a great father, a great husband, and someone that did his best to try and make his community a better place to be.
Well, you're doing it every day, Andy. Thank you so much, Andy Nichols, for joining us from Frederick, Maryland, and good luck with the gala next year. If somebody wants to come to the gala next year, I'm assuming you can buy tickets. They'll be in April of next year?
Yep, it will be in April of next year. Sponsorships usually go on sale in the fall. Frederick County Mental Health Association has a website, and that would be the place to look for that.
All right. Well, we'll put it in the notes here too. So thank you so much, Andy. Great
Thank
meeting
you, Christy.
and good luck with the gala.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity and having me on your show. I appreciate it.
You've been tuning into More Than a Lawyer with your host, attorney Christy Crow. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, www.jinxcrow.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.